Alright, today we're going to be talking about maps. Maps are really, really important for the study of geography, as I'm sure you'd probably assume, since I think for most of you, when you think of geography, what you think of are maps. We'll be talking about what they are and why we use them. Let's start with the basic definition. A map is a way of representing on a two-dimensional surface any real-world location or object. So this can be a map of the world and the entire globe flattened out onto a piece of paper, or it can just be a country or a region, or it can even be something as small as a city, or even some of you may have seen maps of your house. We have maps of the building for our evacuation plan. So it can be as big or as small as you'd like it to be. Today we're primarily going to be focusing on world maps, but throughout the class you'll be working with a variety of different maps of different sizes. Okay, so what are they? We know what they are within an abstract sense. We understand what actually a map is, but what do they do? Primarily, they're tools used by geographers and also regular people to find places and get directions. So you use maps to locate things that you're looking for. They're informative. There are maps that include information. We'll be looking at some of those that'll tell you about the rainfall in an area or the number of people living in any given place. You can use maps to convey a lot of different information. You guys will be doing that. And then the last thing, they're varied. There are a lot of different kinds of maps. There are maps that look different ways for different purposes, and that convey a variety of different pieces of information for different uses at any given time. As far as the types of maps are concerned, we're going to be looking at two particular types of maps, primarily political. Those are the ones that use human boundaries. So a political map is probably is like the map that I have up on the side of the room that has all the countries outlined. And you can have political maps of that go down by city or county or really any sort of human boundary that you'd like to look at. We call them political maps because they map out the politics of an area. So who has decided what land belongs to who, things like that. And then there are physical maps, which display physical boundaries. They show mountains and rivers, like I said in the PowerPoint. They will often be topographic, meaning that they'll show the sort of elevation and terrain of any particular area. They'll oftentimes include all bodies of water, and they won't necessarily include the political boundaries. You can have a map that is both political and physical if it not only shows the human boundaries but also the natural features. But typically speaking, they fall into one category or the other. All maps have 5 elements, and so when you create maps in here, which you will be doing, you're going to have to include 5 major elements. The first one is a title. I need to know the title of the map so I can know what you're looking at. And that's the same as if you go out into the world and you're making maps. A compass rose. We'll get to a compass rose, but a compass rose shows us direction. A legend or a key. If your map contains information, I need to know what the information is. Legends or keys help us figure out what it is we're looking at. And then a scale. A scale will tell us if the map is small, which it's going to be smaller than the real world. It would tell us what distance on the map corresponds to what distance in real life. Lastly, you need to have a source. This is just like any other assignment that you'll make. You need to cite your sources. So the source can also include your name, since you'd be the one creating the map, but also any place that you received information from. So I will, when you create maps, be looking for those elements. Okay, so let's talk about the elements in detail. The compass is the part of the map that gives us direction. You can see I've highlighted your vocab words in green again, like I have in other classes and on other presentations. If you're not familiar with that, if this is the first presentation by me you're watching, I highlight the vocab words in green, so you do need to know those. There are 4 cardinal directions. Those are north, south, east, and west. Never eat soggy waffles is a really easy way to remember those if you're having trouble um, keeping track. And then they're displayed on the compass rose. I included a picture of a compass rose. A compass rose is just an image that goes on top of a map that includes the 4 directions. Sometimes instead of a compass rose, people will just include north arrows, and then because you know what direction north is, you can determine the other 4 directions. But for this class, you do need to include a compass rose. I need to see all 4 directions on your map. Okay. The legend and scale, and I included images of both. The scale tells us how big the map is. So if I have a map that is on a regular 8x11 sheet of paper, then the scale would tell me on that sheet of paper how much of the what distance translates into what distance in real life. The scale that I included it goes for 1 inch, it's approximately 1,500 feet, and I've zoomed in on the scale, so that's not actually accurate anymore, but you can understand how this would work. It can be a little bit tricky until you're actually creating a map, how that will look, but if you have any questions, I'm always here to help, so definitely let me know if you're having trouble with that. And then the legend is how to read the map. So I included another sample legend from a political map of the United States that would include state capitals, county seats. So the county seat is the main city inside of a county, which for Wyandotte County would be Kansas City, Kansas. And then colored lines for the different kind of roadways and bodies of water that we would see. Some maps will change the font of their cities, and so you can see on the legend that I included there that the larger cities have a larger font. That's an easy way to quickly tell population at a glance. So some do that. If you're hand drawing it, that's a little bit trickier to do. Maps are limited. They are certainly not without problems. The major ones that we're going to be talking about are distortion, scale, and projection. Distortion is, if you can understand this, the world is a globe. Maps are not a globe. They're square and they're 2-dimensional. The globe is 3-dimensional. So what ends up happening is, if you can think of an orange, when you peel the orange and you try to flatten out an orange peel, it doesn't ever completely take. It bends and it doesn't completely match the surface of whatever object you're trying to flatten it on, because it isn't flat innately. It's curved and round. Maps are the same way. So when you take the globe and you stretch it out over a piece of paper and flatten it down, what you end up is distortion. And so what we're going to be talking about are how maps sort of deal with that. But one thing to understand about that is that the scale will really affect the distortion. The smaller the area the map displays, it is more able to accurately display this relative size and shape of the region. So let's go back to that orange example. If you're trying to flatten out the entire thing, you're going to be able to get you're not going to be able to get the whole orange flattened because it's going to be distorted. But if you take a smaller amount of that and then you flatten it and then you zoom in, it's going to be less distorted because it's a smaller region of the original object. Maps sort of work the same way. The smaller an area you're looking at, the more accurate it can be conveyed. Another really good way to think about this is the Earth curves gradually as you zoom out. If you think about walking outside, you feel and perceive the world as being flat, so it's not hard to map an area that you perceive because you already perceive it as being flat. But when you look at the Earth, you know that it's a globe, and that's because you've gotten so zoomed out and it's become so big that you can tell it's not flat anymore. Okay, and so the term for a type of map that deals with these issues is a projection. There are different map projections, and different map projections will focus on either retaining the original shape of the continents and regions of the Earth, or retaining the relative size of them. We'll talk about different projections coming up soon. Oh, and by soon I mean literally right now. Okay, so I've included 2 different projections here. The Mercator projection is probably the most common one that you've seen. And that's a little bit problematic, and we're going to talk about why. But that one's been around since the 16th century. And then the Hobo-Dyer projection that I've included is a little bit newer. Just looking at these, you can see that there are some considerable differences there. And I've included a critical question at the bottom of this slide. I want you to think about and talk about what major differences you see between the two projections. I'm going to go ahead and just throw this out there to sort of get you started. What I want you to really focus on, what I think a lot of people focus on in the Mercator projection, is look at the relative size of Greenland compared to Africa. One of your tasks, I think, is going to be to figure out, is Greenland as big as Africa? Ask me if you don't know how to do that, but that's definitely something I want you to look at and think about the sort of deeper implications of the sizing of these different things compared to one another. Okay. The last thing I wanted you to do is making connections, and I've included an assignment on Canvas associated with this, but I want you to tell me, how can maps be used to display the 5 themes of geography? Remember, the 5 themes are location, region, interaction between humans and the environment, place, and movement. And I also want you to tell me how maps can be used to obtain information for the 5 themes of geography. So your assignment for this particular activity is to think about those projections, tell me some key differences that you see, and then relate maps to the 5 themes of geography and give me a short 1 to 3 sentence description, or sorry, 2 to 3 sentence description rather, for each of these 2 questions, and you can submit that to the assignment tab on Canvas. If you have any questions, please let me know, and then that will get us started for today.